Okay, so for this section, we're talking about multiplying, dividing our real numbers. So the first two problems here we worked on was converting a number to a decimal number, and then, or I should say, a fraction to a decimal number, and then converting a decimal to a fraction. So, um, so you'll have, say, 2 and 3/8, right? So to kind of refresh back your memory, if we did 12 divided by 3. The 3 would be the divisor, right? So I have a little, it's kind of always hard to remember what the terms are, but the 3 is the divisor, what you're dividing into. So the 12 is the dividend, okay? And then your result is the quotient, okay? And if you have a remainder, okay, then that's your remainder. So in this case, remember, so 12 divided by 3, we take the 3, which is, I call that the outside number, and 12 is inside number. And then you want to multiply, what can you multiply 3 by to give you 12? And that was 4. So 3 times 4 is 12. And you subtract them, you get 0, right? So same process. However, when we have 3/8, okay, um, 3 is smaller than 8. So we don't have enough um, to divide into 3. So in order to do this, we work this out here, where we put a decimal there just to let us know that this is going to be in decimal form, and then just add zeros, okay, until we have no remainder. Sometimes we still have remainder, maybe it's a repeating remainder, okay? But we work it out until we have no remainder, if possible, okay? So in this case, we had 3, right? So 3 times 8 is 24. That's the highest number that can go into to 30. Okay. So 3 times 8 is 24. We can't go any number higher than that. So we subtract 30 minus 24, we get a 6. Again, so I still don't have enough. So we put a 0 here and then bring it down. So we have 60. And then again, what's the highest number? We can multiply to 8 to get close to 60, and that would be 7. So I brought down here 7 times 8, which is 56. Then we subtract. All right, we got 4 here. Again, we don't have enough. So we put another 0. And then again, what's the highest number? We can multiply to 8 to give us 40, and that would be 5. All right, so 5 times 8 is 40, and then we subtract, and then we got a remainder of 0, and then we stop. Okay, but again, sometimes you might have a repeating number. So if it does that, then you say, it just repeats. You can't go any further. Okay. All right, so that would be the 3/8. So that's the 0.375, and then we just add that to the 2. Okay, so we get 2.375 as our decimal number. Okay. And then in regards to converting it from a decimal to a fraction, so remember, let me pause here for a second. Okay, so for converting a decimal to a fraction, it's really helpful to look at this chart here. Okay, so you have, thousands, hundreds, tens, and ones, and then after the decimal, you have the tenths, hundreds, thousands, 10,000s. All right. So in this case, we have two numbers after the decimal, so that's going to be the hundredths place. All right. So what you do is just you rewrite this 0.06 as 6/100. Okay. And then you can break it down into their factors. So 3 times 2 is 6, and then 50 times 2 is 100. So 2 is a common factor between them. So I can just cross that out. Okay. And then I can reduce 6/100 as 3/50. Okay, so whatever works with your brain, how you want to reduce that. If you want to keep dividing by twos, fine, whatever works with your brain. Okay. Anyway, so that's what we had talked about last time. Just kind of review there or recap. Okay, so for these types of problems, they want us to multiply or divide them. Right. So for the first one here, we got -3/4 times -5/12. Then we have -3/7 times 7/3. Then we have -6 times 1/6 times 7/9 times -9/7 times -3/2. The next one we have, this is D here. Okay, that's negative times negative 4 squared. This for E, we have 10 divided by negative 1/3. F, F, 0 by negative 5. For G, we have negative 1 divided by 0. For H, negative 4/5 divided by negative 3. And then for I, we have negative 0.25 divided by negative 3/4. Okay, so go ahead and try this and see what you get. And once you have your answer, go ahead and post that. All right, so for the first one here, what we want to do, so remember when we're multiplying fractions, we multiply across, right? Not diagonally, but across. So that means I multiply all the numerators on top, and then I multiply the denominators on the bottom. Okay, and then remember, two negatives is going to give us a positive. Okay, so let me just re-jog your memory. So negative times a negative is a positive. A negative times a positive is a negative. A positive times a negative is a negative. And then, of course, a positive times a positive is a positive. Okay, so remember that. And that also it follows suit for division. So negative divided by negative is a positive, a negative divided by a positive is a negative, a positive divided by a negative is a negative, and then a positive times a positive, sorry, a positive divided by a positive is still a positive. Okay. So, so we get negative 3 times negative 5, so that's going to give me a positive 15. And then 4 times 12 is going to give us 48. Okay, and then I can reduce that. All right, so they both have 3 in common, so I can divide the top by 3, and I can divide the bottom by 3. Okay, so that gives us 5 over 16. Okay. The next one here is we can, again, you can multiply everything on top, multiply everything on the bottom. That's totally fine. Okay. But another way is we can also cancel things out, right? If we have a number on the top and a number on the bottom and they're both the same, we can cancel them. So 3 and 3, right? I can cancel those, giving me 1 on each one. Okay. Same thing for 7. I can cancel these guys. I get 1 over 1. So 1 times 1 is 1. 1 times 1 is 1. So that gives us 1. But don't forget the negative here in the front. So that gives us a negative 1 for B. Okay. And then for C, same thing. Again, I can multiply everything on the top and then multiply everything on the bottom, and I can get my answer. Also remember for negative 6 here, I can rewrite that as a negative 6 over 1. Okay, so remember a negative 6 is the same thing as saying negative 6 over 1. Okay, and then I'm going to do the exact same thing as I did on part B to part C. So I got 6's here, so I'm going to cancel that out. That leaves me 1 of each because 6 goes into 6 one time. All right. Same thing for this one. I can cancel these guys out. 9 goes into 9 one time. And then same thing for here. 7 goes into 7 one time. Okay. So then we have all ones on the top except the negative 3. Okay. And all ones on the bottom except for the 2. And then don't forget the negative here in the front as well. So, and we also have a negative here. So we got 3 negatives. So negative times a negative times a negative, right? So these two guys will give us a positive, and then we have the negative down. So positive times a negative will give us a negative overall. Okay? So we have a negative, and then we have the 3 halves, or negative 1.5. Okay, for the next one here, We have to be careful. So remember, we have to do order operations. So we can't just go from left to right. So we got to focus on this first. Okay. What's inside the parentheses is -4, and that -4 is being squared. All right. So that gives us a positive 16 because this is saying -4 times -4, which is positive 16. Okay. And then we have the negative out in the front. So it'll be a -16 will be our answer for that one. Okay. Okay, so again for here, right, we keep the first number when we're doing division. We keep the first number. We change the division here to multiplication. Keep, flip, switch, right? So we keep the 10. Keep the 10. Change the division to multiplication, and then we switch up the -1/3 to -3/1. And then we can put this over 1 and then multiply across, right? So 10 times -3 is going to give us -30, and 1 times 1 is 1. So -30 divided by 1 is still going to give us -30, okay? Now we have to be careful on the next one, right? So this is 0. 0 divided by a -5. Well, um, 0 divided by any number, right, besides 0, okay, is going to give us 0. Okay, so 0 divided by -5 is going to give us 0. Okay, so again, 0 divided by any number besides 0 is going to give us 0. However, for this one, okay, -1 divided by 0, right, that's if I rewrite this, it'll be -1 divided by 0 like that. We can't divide by 0, okay? So, so in this case, this will be undefined, okay? For this one here, we do the same thing as we did for H. So we get -4/5, and this is so important. This problem here is so important, okay? Because when we get into deeper problems, it's going to get more complicated, right? But understanding the principle of how to do this will help us when we do decomposition of rational fractions, okay? But we have now variables and things like that. So -4/5, again, if you want to rewrite it as this way, that's absolutely fine, okay? -4/5 divided by -3. So that reminds us, hey, we keep the first number, we switch up and we flip the division to multiplication, and then this -3/1 becomes -1/3. All right, and then we multiply cross. So that gives us a positive 4, okay, over 15. All right, so for this one here, we got -0.25 divided by -3/4. All right, so first of all, let's address the negatives. Two negatives are going to give us a positive, right? So whether it's being multiplied or dividing, two negatives is going to give us a positive. All right, so our answer should be positive. The 0.25 here, I can change that to what? I can rewrite it as 1/4, right? Or you can do the division that we did. Um, I'm sorry, rewrite it as a fraction form to get the 1/4. But hopefully everybody knows that 0.25, we can represent that as 1/4. So that's going to be -1/4 divided by -3/4. Again, the two negatives is going to give us a positive. So we have -1/4. The division will change to a multiplication. Then we flip the -3/4. So that's going to be -4/3. And then here I can multiply across getting positive 4/12, or I can just cancel the fours, right? Because 4 goes into 4 one time, okay? And then I can multiply across. So again, negative times a negative is a positive, and then 1 times 1 is 1, and then 1 times 3 is 3. So our answer here should be 1/3.